I remember her parents saying, "वो तो ठीक है, खेल लेना, but पढ़ाई कब करोगे?" Brands honestly have failed when they haven't been able to convert that value to dollar.
More than the sport, it's about the winning stories that come out. We're a hero-worshipping country, right?
You need to look at them as people who can change the social narrative. They have very strong stories which are not being headlined right now. The move has to be made, and the move has to be made now.
The Women's Premier League, its viewership, its reach grew by 50% on television this year.
It's not necessarily people who watch women's sports are women. Largely, it's a lot more men who watch women's sports.
We need to shift our lens to look for polished narratives because most of these women athletes don't have polished narratives.
The next big league. A conversation with leaders shaping how India consumes, invests, and believes in sport. And to steer this discussion, we have someone who's been relentlessly the voice for women's empowerment and storytelling. A business journalist and author turned entrepreneur and the founder of SheThePeople and Gayatri. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the incredibly sharp and inspiring Shaili Chopra.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to introduce my stellar panel. It's just wonderful to be here. I have to say that this room does make everyone on stage feel very dwarfed, but we'll do our best. I'm going to invite my panel, Siddharth Sharma, Head of Content, JioStar. Please welcome Siddharth. Preeti Rathi, the founder of LXME, the app for women and financial inclusion. Please have a seat. Namrata Parekh, who is the co-founder of Meraki Sports. Prachi Narayan, who is managing partner Havas Play. And of course, Kala, who has triggered so many thoughts and numbers in our head. Welcome back on the stage, Kala Anand, Director of Sport Advisory at KPMG. Please have a seat. Thank you. Well, the title of this discussion is The Big League. And I think between Janisha and Kala, both have told us the time is now and henceforth. So just for a moment to not look back, but just look forward and throw this very large question to our guests. I'm going to actually start straight away with you, Siddharth. I think both Kala and Janisha talked about the power of spotlight. And I know you and I were shifting in our chairs saying, oh my God, this whole thing is going to come back to broadcast. So why not put you in the spot and ask you, the big league is the big watching league as well. Where are we in that journey to put women's sport in the accelerator mode, so far as fandom and watching goes?
I think we're already on the pathway for an accelerated viewing, and I think women's sport, and if I take the example of WPL, for example, which is the Women's Premier League, its viewership, its reach grew by 50% on television this year. Its digital consumption grew by 34% and 130% growth on connected TV, on connected devices. And I quote Women's Premier League as an example because it happened in smack middle of the Champions Trophy, which was the men's 50-over tournament which India won. So the worry was that will WPL get the kind of viewership that we were hoping it would get if it were played in a very clean window. So I think the broadcaster worked with the boards simultaneously ensuring that the day India matches were happening, the WPL matches did not happen. I think that's something smart that we worked with the board and that we managed to engineer. We also did a bit of a smart play on our network, ensuring that India matches were kept on one channel and the rest of the tournament and the other teams participating were kept on the other channel. What it did was that when we had India matches, the same channel mix had the WPL matches also. So it got a wider funnel and wider access. You can't avoid clashes with cricket because the cricket calendar is so busy. But what is it that we can do to leverage cricket is something that we constantly work on. And that's across sports. Even Olympics, when it's happening and there's a clash with cricket, there are ways as to how we can leverage and widen the funnel by using properties where we see a massive aggregation and use that as a leverage to get eyeballs, fandom, and divert them towards these sports that fans probably want to see but don't know if they are available as and accessible. We try to make them accessible.
Great. I love those numbers and congratulations for moving that needle. I know there's a long way to go, but I do have to say we did notice the kind of shift in your programming was visible, and I would say the spotlight on noticing the key markers on women's cricket at the peak of men's cricket. So thanks for doing that. Namrata, I want to come to you. One of the big things that keeps coming back, and I know this room is full of heroes from the sporting world, is that we need more heroes, more storytelling, more shaping on where they come from, what they did. And as Kala pointed out, they also want to know not just their backstory, but their game story. What is your experience in seeing that transition over the last few years? And what is the path ahead in making that social media friendly and perhaps 10x the fandom?
I think we're a country, we were discussing this earlier, we're a hero worshipping country, right? More than the sport, it's about the winning stories that come out. It necessarily might not be at the back of a performance, but it might be at the back of this beautiful story from one region of a female cricketer or any other female footballer or someone who has basically against all odds made it. This is a great story. We've told the story. You've created this brand of an athlete and you've made people believe, or you've created a community that basically backs this story, right? So I think at a lot of fronts, this entire, and correct me if I'm wrong, your question is about how do we keep the brand building happening,
Yes,
right?
of course.
So,
because brands lead to fans, right?
yeah. So this is the question of how an ecosystem will come together, right? This is not just, I'm just not randomly creating heroes. These heroes will be created when I have competitive game time, when I have more tournaments, when I have more play time, when I have that backing support, not just from a sponsor perspective or a broadcaster perspective, but also at an institutional level. When the entire ecosystem comes together, that is when you will enable these stories to actually come out. That is when you'll enable these communities to become fans of these stories.
Where do you see the gaps currently in this ecosystem?
It's a very broad spectrum because obviously we are a cricket nation, so you will have a couple of sporting disciplines that will have the support. There will be a few sporting disciplines that are still struggling. So it's at a very broad level, but I think at the base, what I feel is competitive playtime, actually. That's, I mean, I've had the I'm actually fortunate enough to not just work in the marketing side of sport, I'm also in the administrative side of sport. Yeah. And today we also, with this interesting thing about this aspect of participator side of women's sport, right? So it's multiple aspects coming together, and actually later on I will touch upon the aspect of how till you don't play, you will not want to watch. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great point. Now we'll come back to that. There are lots of thoughts in there. But Prachi, I want to come to you and ask you, especially when we take the piece of broadcasts, brands at individual level, and of course brands at the business level, one of the key things that one wonders is that if we want a sporting culture that makes connections, we do need to start seeing and showing value in that. Talk to us about some of the recent campaigns. I know Sindhu was here and we saw their spectacular campaign in partnership with Puma. But beyond just a few such star campaigns, we're still waiting to see more broad-based sporting campaigns. What comes first? The sporting heroes and fandom, or the brand and the business and the money?
Shaili, honestly, it's a chicken and egg situation. When you go to brands will look at ROI. You know, there are marketing campaigns, they have answers to give, right? So everything is driven by that. Now, somewhere we're also, like what Namrata was also mentioning, the ecosystem, right? The move has to be made, and the move has to be made now. There are changes that are happening. When you talk about campaigns, the PVMA campaign with Puma was one of the larger campaigns. It was not just about doing that campaign with PV Sindhu, but also about how it was done and how it was executed. It was done in a very bold way. It was done minimalistic. It started with just a tease. So, whoever thought behind doing it in that creative way, it went beyond just a brand endorsement deal, but it also leveraged PV Sindhu's personality in that campaign. It was more than just an endorsement deal, but it actually looked like a creative collaboration. So when we coming back to your question, when we come back to brands, we do encourage them, and brands are also understanding this piece, that they need to invest in this piece. They're also, with WPL, succeeding in the way it is, this conversation has risen in boardrooms as well. They're also looking to invest, and they have done campaigns. For example, Kajaria. Kajaria has recently done the campaign for Olympics, where they wanted to build their brand's perception as resilient. And guess who they picked? They picked 3 women, 3 Olympians, Manu Bhakar, Zeenat, and all these guys, when they came together, picking up 3 women who've done so well to actually build that perception of resilience is landmark, I feel, in that way. Hyundai has been doing a campaign called Drive Within for the last almost 4 years. 4 years ago, they decided to pick up 5 women women cricketers as brand ambassadors, and they've continued with that story. The story has nothing to do with their cricket. It has nothing to do with what they do on the field. They've just been tracking their journeys for 4 years. And today, interesting thing about the campaign, that it only runs in the magazine Man's World, about 3 to 5 women cricketers. So I think that piece is happening slowly. It is a question of business as well eventually, but I think we need to keep going at it. We need to keep going at it from the ecosystem in every aspect.
I want to quickly interrupt there and ask you a question which is often in the minds of most people who track sport, is that we need brands to back sport through a journey.
Yeah.
Not through a moment,
Yeah.
not through a win, not through a milestone alone.
Yeah.
Do you see a shift in the thinking of brands on that front?
Absolutely. In fact, it's also reflecting with the way sports is moving in the country currently. The fiercest of sports persons are not coming from major, cities. Sporting authorities are not picking up them from major towns. They're actually coming from really small towns like Vizag and Hisar. What's happening is brands are also realizing that to be able to build that equity, which is going to be long lasting, while the momentary spikes when you do a campaign where you're sort of getting in and leveraging a moment, of course that gives you a kind of spike, and it's not going to go anywhere. You need that. Brands need that for visibility. But when it comes to building something which will give you a legacy, when it comes to building something which is going to create long lasting impact, they need to catch these stories. They need to catch the journey. And brands have started to do that. Sure. Economically also, it works for them, because you're not poaching on, the celebration when the athlete has already succeeded, but you're actually trying to now catch them from grassroots, bringing up homegrown athletes together. And because of that, you're engaging with communities which are now in that regional space, in those pockets, which are actually going to be the next fans, where the fans are going to come from. So I think it's, even as a business decision, it is an important decision that they're making now.
Yeah, let's stick with the money. It's an important discussion when it comes to women and sport. Kala, you threw a lot of different statistics for us, but the one that I sort of really caught on, and we all think a lot about in our world today, is following and finances. Following will bring money. And with the confidence with which you said that, the next 5 years will be game-changing from that aspect. Where are we missing when it comes to that social media buzz? Because if people want to see their game, they want to follow their journey. They are beginning to see an improvement in numbers on broadcast. The big money. Show us the money.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I think the big difference when you talk about men and women's sports, right? Most often the aspect around men's sports is always ROI. You say ROI gives me reach, blah. Somehow women's sports is on ROV, value. Brands honestly have failed when they haven't been able to convert that value to dollar. That failure is actually on the side of the brand to great extent, that they've not managed to do that, because thank you.
Please feel generous about clapping. It's a really important point.
I think
Thank you.
When we did the survey, we realized as well that there is this 25 to 35-year-old working community that's very, that's showing propensity to buy, to engage in brands that women athletes are front-ending, right? So now, the challenge is you haven't really understood who's this consumer who I'm tapping into. So that differentiation hasn't happened. You're talking to the same consumer who's watching men's cricket, who's watching WPL, who's watching IPL, who's also watching Netflix, who's also doing 15 things at the same time. So I think to a great extent, the ROI, we are still stuck in the ROV when it comes to women's sports community. And all of that is important. But that community is money hasn't been able to translate really well to a great extent. And why I say following is also when we actually talk to a couple of brands that engage with women athletes, it was very interesting to see that they said, you know, what's easy for us is women athletes are more easy and approachable. They engage very authentically with the brand. When we have a consumer who wants to come and meet, there's no airs, they're willing to talk and engage in a conversation. Brands have to realize the currency of that authenticity.
Yeah. It's such an important asset because that's what builds
fans. It's an asset for a brand. So, and eventually what will happen is the values are one that will actually be sustainable over time. Your investment will be very transient, but the values are sustainable in how you convert it. So when I said the game changer of the following, it wouldn't be far by the time women get their act together in terms of how they behave on social media and how they capitalize on this. And I think if there is more investment for women athletes, they will convert all of this. Yeah. So it's, and I understand that, you know, let's take the gods of, I'm not talking the Virat Kohlis of the world, and, you know, let's take them out of the equation to a great extent because of the popular sport. But this is where I think the game changing would happen when we talked about achievements, but trust me, there's a lot of fan following and engagement when women lose and are willing to accept with courage when they lose. And it's interesting to see some of the social media stories of engagement are very high because they feel real when they engage with a woman athlete.
What a brilliant point.
It is not unattainable. It feels more authentic. So it's not like I'm sermonizing, I'm engaging in a conversation with this athlete. So I think the next generation of consumers are going to want that authenticity.
They would. And the term is called #HardRelate. And I genuinely think it's so true. Preeti, I want to bring you in. And this part about that hard relate is linked to how empowerment is so deeply linked with sport, and I don't think there's sort of any debate on that. However, to see sport as a financial enabler, you know, somebody was earlier, Janisha was talking about confidence, change. A lot of that is so deeply connected to how sport can be a financial enabler, something that for most part, people were not even thinking about. Talk to us about your study there.
So, Shaili, I'll correct you a little bit. I think men were thinking about it, right? It was the women and women in sports, I think, which, I mean, it's a long story, right? There weren't enough women in sports. When they were there, there was the entire ecosystem lacking where they were really sort of, I mean, I remember my childhood story when we watched Chak De and one of my friends wanted to sort of play hockey. I remember her parents saying, "Wo to theek hai, khel lena, but padhai kab karogi?" Right? So just the mindset of saying that this could be a career, this could be a wealth creator, was completely, even today, I think for a very, at a very large scale, it's still missing when it comes to women. And I think there's a lot of education that goes into it, but what's rapidly changing, and I'm going to sort of build on Kala's point, is today India has 51% of our population is women. The number of working women in our country have grown, you know, from 2018, we've doubled. From 18%, we've come to 40%. Right? Which means that there's more money in the hands of women. Today, women are making independent choices. It is not, if they want to buy a suitcase, typically it's either both of them deciding or a woman deciding for herself which one I want, right? If it's a car, she's deciding what is the car she wants to buy. Yeah. And therefore, I think women as consumers are a huge growing pool, right? And now if you're going to tell a woman that here is a sports person, a woman that you admire, and she's driving this car versus a man who's driving that car, I think the ability for women in sports to actually ride over this wave is very, very large. I think what's missing is typically that entire, we talk about a lot of things, right? Women, sports women, typically there are a lot of low-hanging sort of problems that we are solving for, whether it's medical facilities, whether it's training, all of that, right? But one very important missing point, and which is actually probably the core of how women can actually successfully make careers out of this, is the financial acumen, right? How do you look at your earnings? How do you look at, making sure that you're independent, financially independent to take those decisions over their career period? The career is not cut short by somebody saying, "Paisa nahi hai, let's not do it," right? So I think that. Second, how do you also look at growing this wealth? I mean, today, when we look at Serena Williams, for example, runs a $900 million empire, right? What's stopping our women to actually look at that trajectory at every sort of, milestone, and not just a milestone, but every point look at, yes, there is a short time where I will play and make money, but how do I ensure that I don't just make hay by charging say an advertisement fee, but also saying, can I get equity? Right? How can I create that wealth?
How do you create the long tail? I want you to hold that thought because it's so direct to the poll, and I want everyone in this room to put up their thoughts on this poll. So I've just pulled that out, and the question that will come onto your screens, and I'll tell you how to poll. Okay, it's on the screen. So now what you need to do is open your phone and scan the QR code like we do, and then poll. And I will read out the question just for your interest. What will convince more brands to consistently invest in women's sport? To Preeti's point and the rest of the panel here, really, how do you create that long tail for women's sport and for sports women to sustain is perhaps linked significantly to this very question. Please pick up your phones and scan it. Yeah, I'm just giving it some time to... Oh, Siddharth just looked back. Yeah? Those of you who haven't, please do this. This is what we call engaging with the solution. Yeah, we still have stuff moving. We've had 109. I think this room has certainly got more than 150 people. So whoever hasn't, lift your phones and get going. Take it out. Take it out. You're part of the room. Okay, last 10 seconds. Okay, that's lovely. Great to see the number climb up to 133. I think another 20 more people to go. Let's shore that up. Okay, I love it. I think that's a great set of numbers, and thank you for being so interactive with this. So what does that tell us? Better visibility through media and coverage? Sure, yes. Proven ROI and measurable impact. It is an important factor. I know that we talk about it, and I think brands would agree this does matter to them. The question is, what will we measure it at? Stronger brand-athlete alignment and values. Great point there. And deeper emotional connection with fans. I think that the first and the last one are connected. So perfect time to bring you back into this discussion. And I want you to talk to us about how immersive, exciting can the fan experience get with mediums like OTT? And how much more can we go beyond just watching live sport?
I think we've already set the benchmarks for going beyond just watching live sports. And believe you me, I would want more people to watch the broadcast that we put out. And when fans come in, the fans come in from various spectrum of fandom. There will be fans who are co-fans and who really watch every event in Olympics where Indian participation is there, or even there's an elite participation, they know their heroes and they follow it. And even while watching cricket, there will be fans who don't know the game as deeply as as one would expect in India, everybody to know. For everybody on the spectrum, there's something that we offer that engages with them. This is in terms of interactivity on the platform, which offers a chance for someone to cheer for their team, cheer for the hero on the app itself, or through various other broadcast initiatives that we have, where we even used lifestyle as one filter to get women to engage deeply on IPL. And Namrata was part of some of the initiatives that we worked on, where we got women cricketers to anchor, where we got fans to come and hold viewing parties on the platform. So you're just not passively watching, but you are engaging. It's a lean-in experience, and it's engaging on the platform. It's engaging on the broadcast. It's telling stories. There's one extreme of Akash Chopra doing punditry on cricket. There's the other extreme of stand-up comics through humor explaining cricket and getting people to engage, because that's such a powerful tool. Get to know the heroes, the man under the helmet for IPL when we tried, and get the family members of the cricketers, the wives and sisters, to come in and tell them their contribution into what went into making this and what kind of a person that hero is. So
Quick intervention. I know you're talking a great deal about cricket, and I no doubt that also needs a lot of attention. Are you seeing this happen for non-cricket sport in the OTT space, and what's the potential there? I mean, your entire journey with Kabaddi, for example, has really brought out a sport from our childhood and our tradition to world-class viewership. Are you investing similar stuff for non-cricket women's sport?
It takes a village to raise a child, right? So it's like Namrata said, it's an ecosystem thing. And whenever there is an ecosystem which is collaborative, which is conducive, which is partnership oriented, we can move mountains. A sport like Kabaddi is just one example where it had no legacy on television, but went on to become the second most watched sport because it was coming together of a perfect storm. People coming in and aligning to a goal. Of course, that can happen. It is for all stakeholders. Broadcast is just one part of it. Federations, the governmental support, your franchise owners, everybody. It takes the league owners. Everybody needs to come together for this perfect storm to happen. And yes, it can happen.
Kala, there are a large number of sectors that you kind of mention in your report, and I just want to double click on a few, right? It is just always this question, and it seems so evident, but we don't seem to have filled that gap, that sectors like retail, fashion specifically within that, FMCG, health, we're seeing just a few brands latch on to the few heroes they selectively pick. But what do you think is holding them back to make this en masse? I mean, the number of athletes today across sport would mean that every brand could potentially leverage some sport or the other. They don't have to wait for cricket. What are you hearing from sector trends, or sort of reading from sector trends?
Yeah, no, thank you. So it was interesting because what happened is conventionally brands that look to leverage women's sports continued to look at women's sports, women as women, which was, the home decors of the world. Let's do fashion and retail. Let's talk about this empowered woman and hence finance. Until a mobile comes in and says, okay, I'm going to have. So I think the shift that's happening is brands that are endorsing, are using men's sports fans are in the same vein also using a women's sport. So they have to work together now. So the shift that we are seeing, and what do I give as examples, right? So even if you're saying a brand like Skechers has a male and a Yastika Bhatia and a Ishan Kishan. Can I do a mobile which has Dhoni? And so you have to somehow, brands have to show that you have women athletes on par, and I'm going to support two on the same vein, so I have a better coverage of this. So I think that's the shift is actually happening from more conventional aspects of looking. At the end of the day, it's a woman. To actually, the current shift is really saying, if I've got this male star, I'm going to equal. And you're beginning to see, the Dubai campaign that had Virat Kohli and Anushka. Now they're a package. Now you're beginning to see the power of the package grow 10x for you versus even him alone, right? So you're beginning to see that contextualization. So I feel like we are breaking into some of these zones, and I would love for us to kind of see that break into, like, you'd have cricketers, for instance, would sell jewelry to plywood to anything, right? Like, it didn't matter. You would have him come and sell kitchen equipment and all of that. And for women to break into it, we're still in sectors that are women dominated, where we still feel that a woman star talks to a woman sports fan. And Namrata and I have had this conversation a lot, saying it's not necessarily people who watch women's sports are women. Largely, it's a lot more men who watch women's sports.
That's right. Yeah.
But that understanding of that, and who was this man, right? And our research kind of shows this is that 36 to 45-year-old male who feels that it's their time now to lift the space. They feel like it's their responsibility sometimes when they're watching women's sports, and why women's sport deserves the spotlight, which is interesting in terms of attitude. So there is a big...
It's very interesting. I really think that that's an anecdote I wouldn't have picked.
Yeah. So it's difference between who's watching to who's invested in that person. There's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
Today, every metric is coming out of who's watching the sport. And everything that we have in this country is from a broadcasting standpoint. And that's probably only metric we've had. What Caitlin Clark managed to do for basketball, going into a stadium full of young college kids, and what she amassed there and transformed the game, is not something that, is what then WNBA capitalized in terms of viewership. We're kind of not working that bit, and I think brands will have different circles of investment. What am I doing in person? What am I doing via gaming? 44% of the gaming community in this country are women. We haven't even touched.
That's right.
We have
How
not
little we
leveraged
talk
it.
about this. This is so well known within the gaming community, and not today, for the last decade. But how few of us really know the energy out there. It's just not emerging out. But Namrata, this is just a perfect segue to ask you that the next few years, it appears that there is a great deal of marketing opportunity to be unlocked. What are the 3 pillars you would pick that could potentially catapult women's sport into women's sports business?
I think it's, rather than 3 or 2, I think largely it'll be stories and community. The fans that the sport is going to create, and the stories that are going to get in the fans. So it's going to be the cycle that we'll have to follow to create. And also, if you're talking about the next few years, I'd like to segue into one instance that we were talking about earlier. I don't know how many of y'all follow women's football in India. Indian women's football. So
Let's find out. Can we have a show of hands?
I don't think too many. But I just like to bring about the fact that today, Imami bought over East Bengal Football Club in 2022. The women's football team was revived after almost 23 years. Today, in the next month, East Bengal women's football team is going to be playing the qualifiers at AFC. India is going to be playing the Asian Cup, and 12 players from that team are from East Bengal football team, right? So I'm saying the future in this, when I'm talking about going ahead, the stories that are going to come out of the success from this, the regional heroes that are going to be created, the fans that are going to be created. Today, I might be watching it on a small app, on an obscure app. Tomorrow, maybe broadcasters are going to pick it up. Because everything is with the broadcasters.
As a poll showed.
Yeah.
Sure. But
Yeah.
thank you, Siddharth, for admitting. But I want to just bring Prachi in, and then I know this box says time's up. Does that really mean it's up? Okay, I'm going to just take 5 minutes. Okay, this is women's sport after all. We're allowed to stretch a little bit. Yeah. Prachi, you know, both the points that Kala and Namrata made just make us rethink as to if the audiences have men, and we can see that they could become champions of women's sport. Why aren't brands able to see this enough?
Shaili, there is still a long way to go here. Brands have started to recognize that, honestly. There is movement on that front, and it's become real. Look at it from this perspective that, just women athletes for that matter, it's a reflection of our society also, right? Women have a stronger voice, like how Preeti was mentioning, that even in the decision-making process, it's not just about corporates and offices, but you have a stronger voice at home because you also have that financial independence, so you can back up your decision with that. Yes. That's also reflecting in how brands are now perceiving women athletes for that matter, because they are understanding that these guys are not to be celebrated only for their victories and medals. You need to look at them as people who can change the social narrative, people who can shape up cultural narratives also. And that is reflecting in the way they are engaging with them. A lot of them, yes, it's still happening that associations stick around leagues. When the league is on, there's an association with teams or, these women athletes. But a lot of them now are understanding the impact. If they want to create a long-lasting, meaningful impact, they should be connecting with these women athletes at an individual level, leveraging their personalities, letting them be who they are, letting them be who their authentic self is. And how Kala mentioned, the fact that these women athletes actually, the frills really cut out from their stories, because they're starting out right now. The audiences are young today. They're also digital first, they're savvy. They're looking for relatable role models. And these women athletes are actually those relatable role models who are young, who are confident. They don't shy away from their, putting their voice out in any way. And they're very confident in whoever they are today. And they're ready to put themselves out in that format. And I think that is inspirational for fans, and brands are seeing that also.
So it's not just one that resonates, but also converts.
Absolutely.
And so I think we were talking about the new generation of fans. I think what they also constantly look for is impact. Preeti, if you could talk to us about that.
So I think one more thing I'd like to just, before I answer that, I think is, we have a Janisha here today that has created this entire Women in Sports. I think it takes women to see the problems that women face. I run a brand which enables women to manage their money. You run a brand which creates something for women. So I think we see the gaps. We know where the issues are. We know where the problems are. I think it is very, very important, and this is going to change very rapidly, that women will create more businesses, more companies that will cater to women customers and which will invest into women in every sphere, including sports. Sure. So I think, and that has at all angles a very large impact, right? It all sort of culminates into impact. Sorry, your question on impact was?
That the new generation of fans actually go beyond just the wins, and maybe we should give them that credit. They see impact.
Absolutely, absolutely. They see, I think, I think the sense of purpose is far more defined and highlighted than it was in the earlier generations. Yeah. I truly believe they also have the luxury to do that. But because they do, I think we are seeing a different world, whether it is a greener world, whether it is an equal world, that is going to happen. And, I've actually written down something which I want to actually share here, which is that Indian women athletes are winning medals today, and all of us are watching that, right? And particularly, I think Kala mentioned, especially when we watch Olympics, etc., right? But now I think they need to win. And the reason I'm saying this also is because I think there is a lot of work to be done, even with the athletes. It's very important that they need to win equity, wealth, and voice. And I think training them for the podium isn't enough. While we need to do all of that and we put in enough, I think lots of people coming forward and doing that, but I think we need to train them for the boardroom, the balance sheet, and their legacy.
And their growth story. Okay, I'm going to give the last word to the audience, but I'm literally going to give you guys 30 seconds each to say one important thing. What are you going to do to contribute to this movement that Janisha talked about in the next 5 years? Siddharth, I'm starting with you.
I think as a collective, as a network, we are always looking how to unlock viewership for 50% of the audience that we still think is untapped. So looking at ways as to how we can unlock that potential is something that's key, important, imperative that we are working towards. And that's something that we are committing as a network to unlock.
Okay, Preeti.
I think the tagline says it here, invest in her. So essentially, and we spoke about this when we were backstage, that I think it's very important to invest in women in sports very early on, not just when they've had a win, but really sort of invest when there's all those obstacles that she faces. But I'd just sort of reverse it as well and say, teach her to invest as well.
Namrata?
I think all the women here play more sport. We have Shweta Subaya from here, from Sisters in Sweat. Please hit her up. Play more and watch more sport. I think that's all there is to women in sport. You have to watch the sport.
Yeah, very well said.
I think as a part of this ecosystem, we need to shift our lens to look for polished narratives, because most of these women athletes don't have polished narratives. They have very strong stories which are not being headlined right now. I think we need to look for those stories and help them come to, bring them to national attention. Maybe they need a little effort. Maybe they're raw, and maybe as marketing, experts, we need to work with them to bring them to the forefront so that business can be done with them.
Absolutely. Kala, you're throwing a number at us?
No number. I will throw kitchen stuff. As Namrata said, play. Milk and cream. Cream is more expensive than milk. More milk, more cream. So more women have to play for us to get the cream, and that sells at a higher price. And I think the aspect really what we are doing is investing a lot in participation. As an initiative, we are actively working with schools and colleges in creating sporting IPs that are women-focused, and to look at a sport that women play, not saying cricket, this is men's cricket and women's cricket, but to give women's cricket its separate identity.
Yeah.
Because it's different from men's cricket. So I think that's a big part of our strategy for the next few years.
That's a great point. As I said, I'll give the final word to the audience. The poll that I've saved for the last is the one where Kala had thrown a number of 864 million USD. How are we going to reach that in commercial value for women's sport? It's so nice. Now, I don't want to remind you guys to scan. All the phones are up.
We're very conservative usually as a company, so we're very comfortable to stay there.
I can see a lot of people shaking their heads, changing their minds, punching something, then repunching it. See the last poll at 144, right? We need to at least beat that number. Interesting, yeah? Everyone's leaning towards community. Thus far? I love the rise of micro movements. And that's such a significant part of a sporting culture. Okay, 10 seconds, last 10 seconds. Let's shore up these numbers from 100 to 150. So I think in many ways, I think we all here recognize the power of bottom up. To what Kala and the rest of the panel said, let's increase the top funnel and then create more and more heroes, and don't put them through just the win test, but a wider test. What can I say? This subject was called the next big league. On my part, we'll do our best at SheThePeople to tell more stories. But thank you very much. Women's sport, indeed, is the next big league. Thanks very much. Thank you.